Today is finally frame day for the budget crawler. We are going to clean up this rust and get this thing painted black. I have been putting this off as long as I possibly can because I've done far too many frames like this in the past, and I'm not looking forward to doing this one, but let's just go ahead and get this over with. First thing I'm going to do is strip this thing down so we have full access to the frame when we clean and paint it. Which means I'm going to take off both bumpers, front and rear. I'm going to take off the sway bar here, so I'll probably clean that up and paint that. Take off the tires, get this thing up on jack stands. I'm going to pull out the exhaust so that I can get to the back side of the frame where the exhaust is and paint all of that. Luckily, we had that transmission cross member that we installed a little while ago, so I won't have to deal with removing and painting the center skid plate there. New skid plate is still in the works, so stay tuned for that. And we'll pull off whatever else we find along the way that's easy enough to remove and makes sense to remove. So here we go. I've found that Torx bolts, like the ones that hold the bumper on, and impact guns don't typically go too well. I usually end up breaking the Torx bit, the socket, or end up stripping out the Torx head on the bolt. So we're doing this the hard way. And I think that's as far as I'm going to go up front here. Like you saw, the sway bar end links were apparently not connected on either end. Just the ball that's bolted to the sway bar itself came out of the socket that is part of the end link. So the sway bar was actually doing nothing, I guess. Good thing I didn't try to do any autocross racing or anything with this thing. So I find it pretty interesting to look at the way things are put together from the factory, and it's kind of cool when you get a Jeep that is untouched as this one seems to be at this point. And you got these little blue marks right here. You got one here, and then the other one on the other side is kind of tough to see because it's getting a little rusty there, but it makes you think about why they put these things here from the factory. Maybe at every point that something was supposed to be bolted to the frame along the assembly line, they put some colored paint. And then they knew that once they didn't see colored paint anywhere on the frame, everything had been attached. Maybe it was something like that, but I just find it really cool seeing little things like this. Now, the unfortunate thing about the rear bumper is that technically these end caps are supposed to come off to properly remove this bumper, because there are little pieces that come off of this end cap and go inside of the frame right here, which you can see right here. And to remove these really shouldn't be a problem, but as you can tell by the condition of the frame, where I live, everything rusts really badly. And the heads on these bolts are Torx bits, and they're so small that they strip out really easily. And I'm speaking from experience here. I know that these bolts are not going to come out if I try to turn them. So what I've found in the past to be the easiest thing to do is take a Sawzall blade, go between the frame and the end cap, and just slice off that little piece that sticks into the frame. And you won't be able to tell once a bumper goes back on. And the only thing there'll be is just a little bit of an open hole which goes into here, which I don't think is a big deal because, as we can see on the front bumper, there are holes in the end caps from the factory. I think I've got it torn down as far as we're going to go, and here's where we're at. So we've got the exhaust removed, the rear bumper, the front bumper, the sway bar cover up front, both front and rear sway bars, and I pulled out the wheel well liners for the rear wheel wells. And we're losing daylight here, but here's what we're starting with under the Jeep. I would say this side's not as bad as the driver's side. This is the passenger side here. But this is the reason I pulled out those wheel well liners. I could see a good amount of rust forming on the tub right here. And I want to clean out these rails right here. These are what all the body mounts tie into. It's this rail here. It's quite a bit of sand, so I'll flush that out before I put the wheel well liner back in. But we'll get all this cleaned up nicely. And what I'm going to use to do that is, number one, an air-powered needle scaler here. This thing has a lot of miles on it, but it keeps going. I think it's just a cheap Harbor Freight one. It's like 20 bucks or something, so definitely got my money's worth out of that. We're going to use the angle grinder with a wire wheel attachment, and then get this assortment of wire wheels for a hand drill that we'll use to get into the little tight little nooks and crannies and everything that the angle grinder can't get into. And this is the part that I haven't been looking forward to, laying under this thing covered in rust flakes and dirt. But let's get her done. Well, in the interest of preserving my camera, I chose not to film any of the rust removal process here. So this is pretty much where I'm at right now. I'm getting ready to clean up and paint. It's not perfect, but we're not going for perfect on this. This is not a show vehicle. This is purely a frame preservation project. So pretty much we knocked off most of the major rust. There's a few little small spots here and there, like around the coil bucket. I mean, I could, and I have in the past, spent a full week cleaning one of these things up and getting it ready to go. But this is basically the culmination of probably a full day's work using the needle scaler. Just took off all the major scaling, and you used the cup wire brush on the angle grinder. And then I used some of the small little drill wire wheels to get into the tight spots, like right around pieces like this and everything. So we've got the outside, the inside, and the bottom of the frame done. The top, anywhere I could reach it I got, but I didn't go nuts trying to get it all through under the body here. But having that 1 inch or 1 1/4 inch body lift I installed a little while back really helped get into some of the tight areas in here. It's actually been about a week since the last video. You can see there's a little bit of flash rust forming on here because this frame's just been sitting in bare metal for a week. So I'm just going to take the wire wheel, touch these spots up really quickly, probably like 2 minutes or less, going over the whole frame here just really quickly, and then I'm going to be ready for paint. Like I said, not going for a show quality finish, but next thing you'll see is the finished painted frame. And here's the final product. You see I've still got everything masked up here. The gas tank skid I just hit really quickly. Didn't prep that because we're going to be replacing that skid pretty soon, but I figured while I was in there with the paint, might as well spray it a little black. And you can see all the texture from the pitted metal where the rust was really well with the gloss paint, which is kind of unfortunate, but a matte paint would have hid that a lot better, but I haven't had the best luck with matte paint. I almost think it's a little more porous, so rust starts forming a lot sooner after you paint than it does with the gloss. So like I said, we're going for frame preservation with this, not so much show quality finish. If I wanted it to be real nice, I could have spent days and days and days and even more days, but this is good enough for us. The frame's probably going to get pretty gouged up on rocks anyways, so I'm always going to be constantly touching it up, and it's never really going to look too nice, so I'm totally fine with how it came out. Now let's get everything back together. I want to stop here for a minute and say that all this work we just did is preventing the frame from rusting from the outside in, which is only a small part of the problem with these TJ frames. The biggest problem is that they never came with drain holes from the factory. As you can see right here, right after I got the Jeep, I went ahead and drilled frame holes. I actually have another video, separate video on where I prefer to drill holes and how I prefer to drill them, and I'll link that down below. So what else are we going to do besides drill drain holes to prevent this thing from rusting from the inside out? Well, my go-to product is fluid film. I have not found anything that works anywhere near as well as fluid film when it comes to protecting metal from rusting. The problem with the inside of the frame is that it's probably already scaling. There's dirt inside there. If we try to put paint in there, all that's going to happen is we're going to create voids and we're going to trap all that dirt. That's going to be pockets for water to build up. So I will not paint the inside of a frame. All I am willing to use is this fluid film. And to apply that fluid film inside the frame, I actually have this little 360-degree wand right here that is ironically off of a can of Eastwood internal frame coating. That pretty much wraps it up for today. Like I said, I didn't get a whole lot of action shots in there because I record with a DSLR camera, and in the interest of preserving that, I chose not to get paint all over it and flakes of rust and rust dust from wire wheeling, so you just get to see the final product here. And on the topic of dust and contaminants, I would like to mention that I wore a respirator while I was doing this whole thing, both wire wheeling and while painting, and needle scaling for that matter.
And I would suggest that you do as well if you do something like this. And you know, it's those paper ones, those disposable ones that they sell. I guess they're better than nothing, but I think they're just barely better than nothing. I would suggest picking up a good 3M respirator. The one that I use is I was maybe $30 or $40, and I mean you can't even smell the paint through it. It works so well and filters the air that well when you're breathing it in. But anyway, where did we end up cost-wise on the build today? Well, there are two expenses that I'm going to count are the wire cup brush for the angle grinder. It's one of those twisted wire cup brushes. I picked it up from Harbor Freight. It was $4.83. Totally used that thing up. There was nothing left on it when I was done, and yeah, it was definitely got my money's worth out of that one. And then we used some paint. So it was 1 can of primer and 7 cans of black spray paint. Came out to $41.99 down at Walmart. And that brought our total for the day up to $46.82, which leaves us with a grand total of $2,695.55 as the cost to date on this Jeep, including the purchase price. Now, I'm not sure what we're going to move on to next, but the frame has been holding up quite a bit on here. I've been putting off doing other things because I wanted to paint the frame first, so I think we can kind of go full speed ahead at this point. But you have to wait until the next episode to see what we tackle next. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe for more on this Jeep to come. Always appreciate a thumbs up on the video, and thanks for watching.